Hello, this is An Architect Goes to Law School. The first law school class we'll be covering is Legislation and Regulation. This course discusses the process by which laws are drafted and enacted. In the American system of the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, many laws are given substance by agencies under the umbrella of the executive branch. Administrative policies and processes make up the daily application of these laws. One example of this is Architectural Licensing Acts. While legislation and regulation courses in law schools probably don't address these licensing acts specifically, I've chosen it to discuss the framework by which architects are licensed. This framework flows from the licensing acts to the administrative policies. Because these videos are about the laws and judicial precedents that shape the practice of architecture, some fundamental information is necessary. States are granted the power to promote the health, safety, and welfare of the general public via the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The 10th Amendment says that powers not explicitly granted to the federal government by the Constitution are reserved for the states. One such power is a police power regarding the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. The modern structure of architecture as a licensed profession is based on this concept. Every U.S. state has a licensing act that controls the practice of architecture. These licensing acts include the various requirements for licensure as an architect. There are multiple reasons for these licensing acts. Minimum competency testing ensures that licensed architects are able to properly design buildings to protect their users, inhabitants, and the general public. This relates back to the police power. This gatekeeping is beneficial to the public because it prevents insufficiently educated and trained people from grossly endangering buildings' users. Cynically, requiring an applicant for licensure to follow the prescribed steps and take an exam to earn an architect license creates an artificial limitation on the number of active practitioners. Licensure prevents there being a glut of practitioners fighting for work and possibly cutting corners or laws in order to get clients and projects. A sampling of these licensing acts shows certain common elements, some of which will be discussed more thoroughly in future videos. These include education requirements, experience standards like NCARB's Architectural Experience Program, examination, continuing education, use of an architect seal, and disciplinary processes. Here are some examples of relevant Licensing Acts clauses. Kentucky Revised Statute Section 323.230 is a clause common among many states. Quote, "Only persons licensed under this chapter may be styled or known as architects in Kentucky or use any words or letters or assume any titles or description tending to convey the impression that they are architects." End quote. This is an important point. Before a person earns their architect license, it's a best practice to check state laws and regulations to determine if there is a prohibition regarding job titles. Some examples of questionable titles in some states are architectural intern and architectural designer. When I was not yet a licensed architect, it was a best practice to simply be called intern to avoid running afoul of the law. This Kentucky law stands in contrast with Massachusetts where, quote, "An individual shall not be deemed to have violated 231 CMR 4.03 if he or she uses the title intern architect." End quote. It's a best practice to personally check your state's laws concerning job titles. Don't take other professionals' words for what is acceptable and what is not. Laws change. Idaho's Title 54, Professions, Vocations, and Businesses, specifically Chapter 3, Architects, Section 54-315, statutorily categorizes certain violations of Idaho's architects' rules as a misdemeanor. One example is, quote, "representing oneself to be an architect or implying that he is an architect, as defined in this chapter, through the use of the word architect, architecture, architectural, or similar terms, without having at the time of so doing a valid architect license under this chapter." End quote. As a side note, in addition to non-licensed architectural professionals not using variations of the word architect in their job title, non-licensed individuals should refrain from offering architectural services. Not every design project requires the seal and signature of an architect. So, it's possible for non-licensed individuals to offer drafting and design services without running afoul of licensing statutes. However, to reiterate, they are best served by not calling what they do architecture. Maine's rules for the practice of architecture include various defined pathways to licensure. One such path is to demonstrate having earned 11 years of full-time architectural work experience following having earned a non-architectural bachelor's degree. Maine also allows a candidate to qualify for licensure after 13 years of full-time architectural work experience without any college degree. While not necessarily common among pathways to licensure in many states, these permissions highlight the possibility of a more traditional apprenticeship model of professional experience. One last interesting Licensing Act clause is that Ohio has a statutory education assistance program pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code section 4703.071. This program pays an intern's enrollment fees for the internship program, which presumably means the Architectural Experience Program administered by NCARB. Because it would take hours and hours to discuss all the different states' licensing acts with their unique clauses or even the clauses that are common to all the different states, I'll just say that it's a best practice for anyone watching this to research your state's act. The rules and regulations for the practice of architecture are important. Feel free to comment, ask questions, and suggest topics you'd like me to discuss. Next up in legislation and regulation is Architectural Licensure University. Thank you for watching An Architect Goes to Law School.